All right, let's get right into it. You've probably heard this your whole life. Work hard and you'll get ahead. But what if that's not the whole story? What if the system you're working so hard in isn't actually built for you, the earner, to get truly wealthy? What if it's designed from the ground up to benefit a totally different group of people? Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and look at why the economic system is really designed for owners, not earners.
This right here, this is the big idea we're going to unpack. Just think about it for a second. When new money gets printed, where does it actually end up? It doesn't magically show up in your paycheck, right? In fact, salaries almost always lag behind, meaning your cash buys less and less. But that new money, it definitely pushes up the price of things like stocks and real estate. And who owns that stuff? Investors. So, by its very design, the value flows to the owners of assets. It's a completely different set of rules for the game. So let's just lay it out, side by side. Over here, you've got the worker. Their paycheck, it's literally shrinking in value every single day thanks to inflation. And over here, the investor. Their assets, they're often getting more valuable because of that very same inflation. And don't even get me started on taxes. You know, the tax code is just full of loopholes and deductions, but guess what? The really juicy ones, the most powerful ones, they're saved for people who own assets, not for people who earn a salary. And that's not some accident, folks. That is the design.
So, when you're staring this reality in the face, what's the move? You've really got three choices. Number one, you can get angry. And hey, that's totally understandable. Number two, you can just stay passive and let the system do what it's going to do. Or there's door number three. You can learn the rules of the game so you can finally start playing it to your advantage. And that's what we're here for, to hand you the playbook.
Okay, let's jump into the first major tool in that playbook, stocks. You know, this is probably the most straightforward way to stop being just a consumer in the economy and start becoming an owner of it.
I mean, think about it like this. Every single time you see someone buy a pair of Nikes, or every time a friend orders something on Amazon, a company just made a profit. Well, as a shareholder, you get a tiny little piece of that action. All of a sudden, you're not just the person spending the money, you're owning a piece of the machine that's collecting it. So, where do you even begin? Well, the absolute easiest way in is with something called a broad market index fund. The best part? You don't have to be some kind of stock-picking genius. Nope, you can buy just one single fund, say, one that tracks the S&P 500, and bam! You instantly own a tiny piece of the 500 biggest companies in America. You're not betting on just one company anymore, you're betting on the entire US economy. If it grows, you grow right along with it. It's that simple.
All right, but what if you're willing to kick things up a notch? Maybe take on a bit more risk for potentially higher rewards? Well, then you can look at growth-focused funds. These are the ones that really zero in on the most innovative sectors. You know, a lot of tech companies that are aiming for explosive growth. But here's the catch. When times are good, these things can absolutely skyrocket. But when the market turns sour, they tend to fall way faster and harder. It's definitely more of a roller coaster ride.
Okay, but what if you're really bullish on a specific trend? Let's say you're convinced that artificial intelligence is the future. Well, the cool thing is, the system lets you invest in that entire idea. So instead of stressing out trying to pick the one AI company that's going to win the race, you can just buy a single fund that holds a whole basket of them. Robotics, software, you name it. You're not betting on a horse, you're betting on the race itself.
Hey, this isn't just about tech. Think about other huge, unstoppable trends. We have an aging population, right? That points to massive, long-term growth in healthcare. Or what about semiconductors? You know, the tiny little chips that literally power our entire modern world? There are specific funds for all of these things, letting you invest directly into these big picture ideas and own the companies that are building our future.
All right, moving on from stocks, let's talk about an asset you can actually touch and feel, real estate. Now, this is a whole different ballgame. You own a physical, hard asset. You're in control. And most importantly, you get access to some of the absolute best tax breaks the system has to offer. Now, what's the catch? Well, it usually takes a lot more money to get started, and it's definitely not a passive investment. It's hands-on.
So let's walk through a super simple example just to see how this works. Let's say you buy a rental property. After you collect all the rent and pay for all the expenses, I'm talking mortgage, taxes, insurance, repairs, the whole shebang, you're left with a cool $10,000 of pure profit sitting in your bank account. Not bad for a year's work, right? But here's where the real magic of the system kicks in.
The secret weapon here is a little thing in the tax code called depreciation. Okay, get this. The IRS basically lets you pretend that your building is losing value every year just because it's getting older. This creates what's called a paper loss that you can write off on your taxes, even if your property actually went up in value in the real world. Nope, that's not a typo. This is a rule specifically written to benefit property owners.
And the result of this is, well, it's pretty mind-blowing. You have $10,000 of actual cash in the bank. But when it comes time to file your taxes, after you subtract that paper loss from depreciation, you only have to tell the government you made $2,800. You pay taxes on the tiny number, not the big one. I'm going to say that again. You made more money, but you get to legally pay way less in taxes. That is the power of playing the game as an owner.
Okay, next up, let's switch gears and talk about gold. Now, it's really important to understand that gold isn't an investment like stocks or real estate. A company creates products. A property generates rent. A bar of gold. It just sits there. Its value comes from a completely different place. The best way to think about it is as a kind of hard money, or maybe the ultimate insurance policy for your wealth.
Yeah, it really all boils down to one word: fear. People don't buy gold because they think it's going to produce something new. They buy it because they're scared. Scared that the dollars sitting in their bank account are bleeding value. When people start to lose confidence in the whole system, that's when they run to gold. It is the ultimate uh-oh asset.
And if you look at history, it totally backs this up. You can see that gold's biggest price spikes happen almost perfectly in line with our worst economic crises. When people get scared and lose faith in everything else, stocks, real estate, even the dollar itself, they flock to gold because it's been a store of value for thousands of years. The goal with gold isn't to get rich, it's to stay rich when everything else feels like it's falling apart.
Okay, so we've covered the big three: stocks, real estate, and gold. Now let's quickly touch on a couple of more advanced asset classes you can use to round out your portfolio and maybe add some extra growth or diversification.
First up, we have speculative assets. Think cryptocurrencies, startup investing, things like that. Now, the potential upside here is insane. We're talking about potentially life-changing returns. But, and this is a huge but, the risk is off the charts. These things can, and very often do, go straight to zero. You have to go in fully prepared to lose every single penny you invest.
So, what's the smart way to play with this kind of fire? It's simple. Use a very small bucket. Speculative stuff should only ever be a tiny little slice of your overall portfolio. The classic mistake is people betting the farm, hoping for that one big score. No. Smart investors treat this stuff like a lottery ticket. It's a small, calculated bet that you can afford to lose. It is not the foundation of your financial house. And last but not least, let's look outside the US. I mean, think about it. Investing only in your home country is basically making a massive bet that your one country will always do better than the entire rest of the world, forever. That's a risky bet. So, to hedge that, you can diversify internationally. There are simple funds that give you a piece of the whole globe, or you can get more specific and target developed markets like Europe and Japan, or even higher growth emerging markets.
So, after running through all these different options, what's the big takeaway here? Well, the point isn't just to go out and buy a random collection of stuff. The real goal is to understand what all these tools are for, so you can start building your own system for creating wealth. It's about starting to think like an investor.
And here it is, your basic investor toolkit. You've got stocks for ownership in the economy. You've got real estate for hard assets and those incredible tax breaks. You've got gold as your insurance policy. You've got a small slice of speculative assets for that calculated moonshot. And you've got foreign investments for global diversification. See, every single tool has a specific job to do.
And honestly, that is the most important thing to get. You're not just a bystander anymore. You now have the foundational knowledge. You get the different asset classes, and you understand the specific job each one is supposed to do. The tools are officially in your hands now.
So we're going to end with this one question. The whole system is a game, and it has a very clear set of rules that are tilted to favor the owners. Now that you've had a look at the rule book, the only question left is, are you ready to learn how to play?